Have you ever stood at the precipice of a new day, a new week, a new year, and felt the exhilarating, almost electric hum of potential? You can see it, can't you? The version of you that wakes up early, that exercises, that finishes a project, that writes the book, that finally learns a language. This version of you is not a fantasy. It feels real, tangible, a blueprint of your highest self living just behind a thin veil. You make a promise to that person. Today is the day. This time, it will be different. And then the day happens, the alarm rings, and the warmth of the bed feels like a gravitational force. The momentary discomfort of a workout looms larger than the long-term satisfaction. The blank page seems to mock you, and slowly, decision by tiny decision, the veil drops again, and the gap between who you are and who you know you could be widens into a chasm. Why is this struggle so universal? It's a silent, deeply personal battle fought by millions of us every single day. It's the paradox of modern life. We have more information, more tools, more life hacks than ever before, yet the simple, ancient art of doing what we know we ought to do feels increasingly out of reach. We label a lack of willpower, a failure of motivation, a character flaw. We call ourselves lazy, undisciplined, inconsistent. But what if those labels are wrong? What if the entire way we think about discipline is fundamentally broken? This was the question that began to haunt Kimberly Olson. She wasn't a guru sitting atop a mountain, dispensing wisdom from a place of innate perfection. She was a woman in the trenches of a demanding life, a life that was, by all external measures, successful, yet internally felt like a constant, losing battle against her own intentions. She was a military officer's wife, an entrepreneur, a mother, and she found herself standing in the middle of that very same chasm, looking at the blueprint of the woman she wanted to be, and feeling profound ache of not knowing how to get there. Her journey wasn't an academic exercise. It was a desperate search for a map, a personal quest to answer that universal question not just for others, but for herself. It was a mission to deconstruct the very essence of self-discipline, not as a rigid, punishing force, but as an art form, something that could be learned, practiced, and ultimately mastered. To understand the depth of Olson's discoveries, you first have to understand the world she was living in, the specific pressures that ground her down and ultimately sparked her search for a new way. Imagine a life lived in 2 to 3 year increments. That was the rhythm of her existence as a military spouse. Every few years, the entire foundation of her life will be uprooted. A new city, a new house, a new school for her children, a new community to tentatively join. Each move was a complete reset, erasing the fragile networks of support she had painstakingly built. Friendships, professional connections, even the simple comfort of a familiar grocery store aisle. All of it had an expiration date. In this state of perpetual transition, consistency felt like an impossible luxury. How do you build a business when your address is temporary? How do you establish deep, grounding personal habits when your very environment is in constant flux? The external world was a whirlwind of uncertainty, and this chaos began to seep inward. She was a goal-oriented person, filled with ambition and ideas. She would start projects with a burst of fiery enthusiasm, a new business venture, a fitness regimen, a personal development course. But the relentless demands of managing another cross-country move, of being the sole anchor for her children in a sea of new faces, would inevitably chip away at her resolve. Her energy, a finite and precious resource, was constantly being diverted to the urgent, leaving little for the important. The important things, her own goals, were always the first casualties. They were the things that could be put off until things settled down. But, of course, things never truly settled down. The unfinished projects began to pile up, not just as physical clutter, but as psychic weight. Each one was a monument to a broken promise she had made to herself. It was a quiet, creeping erosion of self-trust. The voice of her inner critic grew louder, whispering that she was a starter, not a finisher. The frustration was immense. She was surrounded by the epitome of discipline in the military culture. She saw firsthand the power of structure, routine, and unwavering commitment. Yet, when she tried to apply that same rigid, brute force mentality to her own life, it backfired spectacularly. She would try to white-knuckle her way through a new habit, relying on sheer willpower, only to find herself exhausted and depleted, falling back into old patterns with a vengeance. Her moment of crisis wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow burn, a dawning realization that her life was happening to her. She was a passenger, reacting to the demands of the schedule set by the Department of Defense, a life shaped by her husband's career, a day dictated by the needs of her family. She loved her family. She was proud of her husband, but a growing part felt invisible, her own potential lying dormant and unexpressed. The chasm between the woman she was and the woman she wanted to be had never felt wider. It was from this place of profound personal frustration, this deep yearning for a sense of agency over her own life, that her quest truly began. She knew there had to be a better way than the cycle of shame-fueled motivation and willpower-driven failure. The answer couldn't be to simply try harder. The answer had to be to try smarter. Her first major breakthrough came not from a productivity seminar or a self-help book, but from a radical reframing of the entire concept of discipline. She began to dismantle the word itself, chipping away at the harsh, punitive connotations it held for so many, including herself. We tend to associate discipline with a drill sergeant, with punishment, deprivation, and forcing ourselves to do things we hate. It's a battle, a war waged against our own desires. But what if, she wondered, that was a fundamental flaw in our approach? What if discipline wasn't an act of self-flagellation, but the ultimate act of self-love? This was the paradigm shift that changed everything. She realized that every time you choose the discomfort of a workout over the comfort of the couch, you aren't punishing your present self. You are loving your future self. You are casting a vote for a future you that is stronger, healthier, and more vibrant. Every time you turn off the television to read a book, you aren't depriving yourself of entertainment. You are investing in a future you that is wiser and more knowledgeable. Every time you sit down to work on your passion project when you're tired, you're honoring the dreams of your future self. Seen through this lens, discipline transforms from a negative to a positive, from a burden to a privilege. It is the tangible, actionable expression of your own self-worth. It is telling yourself, through your choices, that you are worthy of the future you envision. This insight reframed the internal conversation. The old script, filled with I should and I have to, was replaced with a new one centered on I choose to and I get to. This wasn't just a semantic game. It was a profound psychological shift. I have to go to the gym. Feels like a chore. I choose to go to the gym because I love the feeling of being strong and energetic. Feels like an empowering choice. This new perspective began to dissolve the internal resistance. The daily battle against herself started to feel more like a partnership with her best self. She began to see her goals not as distant, intimidating mountains to be conquered, but as a series of loving choices to be made in the present moment. She tells the story of a client, a woman who dreamed of writing a novel but could never find consistency to do it. For years, she had tried to force herself to write 1,000 words a day, a process that felt like pulling teeth. She saw the daily writing session as a brutal chore she had to endure. But after shifting her perspective, she began to see that 1 hour of writing not as a demand on her time, but as a gift to herself, a sacred hour to connect with her creativity, to build the world of her story, to honor the artist within her. The task didn't change, but her relationship to it did. It became an act of self-care, as vital and nourishing as a healthy meal. And with that shift, the resistance melted away, and the words began to flow. This was the first foundational pillar. Discipline is not about what you lose. It is about what you gain. It's the bridge built, choice by loving choice, between the person you are today and the person you have the potential to become. But as powerful as this new mindset was, it was a magic bullet. Life, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, still happened. A positive attitude is a wonderful thing, but it can be a flimsy shield against a barrage of unexpected demands, logistical nightmares, and sheer human exhaustion. Olson discovered this quickly. She could feel motivated. She could see her choices as acts of self-love, but then a child would get sick, or an appliance would break, or an unforeseen deadline would pop up, and her carefully laid plans would disintegrate. Her willpower, even when fueled by this new, positive energy, was still a finite resource. It could be, and often was, completely depleted by the end of a chaotic day. This led her to the second, and arguably more practical, of her great discoveries. The most disciplined people she observed, particularly in the military world that surrounded her, didn't actually have more willpower than anyone else. In fact, they often seemed to be using less of it. Their secret wasn't stronger will. It was a smarter structure. They had engineered their lives in such a way that the right choice was almost always the easiest choice. They weren't making dozens of difficult decisions every day. They were simply following a predetermined system. Their discipline wasn't a moment-to-moment moral struggle. It was the natural outcome of their environment and their routines. This was the second pillar. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Willpower is a fickle and unreliable employee, but a good system works for you even on your worst days. She began to see her own life not just as a series of choices, but as a system to be designed. She became an architect of her own discipline. For example, instead of relying on willpower to go for a run in the morning, she would lay out her running clothes the night before. The decision was essentially made for her when she was clear-headed and motivated. When the alarm went off and her groggy brain wanted to stay in bed, the path of least resistance was to simply put on the clothes that were waiting for her. She reduced the friction, the number of small decisions that stood between her and her goal. This principle extends to every area of life. If you want to eat healthier, you don't just try to resist junk food. You architect your kitchen so that healthy food is visible, prepped, and easy to grab, while junk food is out of sight or, better yet, out of the house entirely. If you want to read more, you don't just hope to find the time. You create a system, like leaving a book on your pillow so it's the first thing you see at night, or replacing the social media app on your phone's home screen with a reading app. Olson realized that true discipline is less about inner strength and more about intelligent external design. It's about creating what she calls bright lines and pre-commitments. A bright line is an unambiguous rule, like, I don't check emails before 9 a.m. or I go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, no matter what. It removes a need for in-the-moment negotiation with yourself. A pre-commitment is a choice you make today that locks in a future behavior, like signing up and paying for a class, or scheduling a meeting with a workout partner. These structures act as external scaffolding, supporting you when your internal resolve inevitably wanes. The mindset shift was the why, but this was the how. It was a recognition that we are all profoundly influenced by our environment, and that instead of fighting it, we should curate it. The goal is to build a life where your desired behaviors are the default setting, not a constant uphill battle. For a long time, these two principles felt like separate, powerful tools in our arsenal. The first was the internal engine, reframing discipline as self-love, which provided the motivation and shifted the emotional tone of the entire endeavor. The second was the external chassis, building systems and designing an environment that made consistency easy, providing the practical structure for that motivation to flourish. Both were effective, but they still felt distinct. One was about psychology, the other about logistics. The true aha moment, the grand synthesis that tied everything together into a single, elegant theory, came when she realized they weren't two separate ideas at all. They were two parts of a powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. This was a unifying theory that formed the core of her work. Your systems are the physical manifestation of your self-love, and your daily actions, guided by those systems, are what solidify your identity. It wasn't just mindset plus systems equals discipline. It was something far more dynamic. It works like this. You begin with a mindset of self-love, principle 1. You decide that you are worthy of the future you desire. This loving intention provides the initial energy to do the hard work of building a system, principle 2. You clean out the pantry. You lay out your work clothes. You set the automatic do not disturb on your phone. Then you use that system. You follow the predetermined path. And here's where the magic happens. Every time you successfully execute an action using your system, every time you eat the healthy snack that was easy to grab, every time you complete the morning run because your clothes were laid out, you are doing more than just completing a task. You are casting a vote for a new identity. You are providing your brain with concrete, undeniable evidence that you are the kind of person who follows through. You are proving to yourself, in the language of action, that you are a disciplined person. This action, this proof, then powerfully reinforces the initial mindset of self-love. It closes the loop. The positive feeling of accomplishment, of honoring your commitment to yourself, deepens your belief that you are worthy and capable. This, in turn, gives you more energy and motivation to maintain and even improve your systems. It creates a powerful upward spiral. The systems make the actions easier, the actions build the identity, and the identity strengthens a mindset that created the systems in the first place. This grand synthesis finally solved the original problem, the chasm between intention and action. The chasm exists because our identity is out of alignment with our desired actions. We see ourselves as the kind of person who is undisciplined, and so we act accordingly no matter our intentions. The feedback loop of systems and actions systematically rewrites that identity. It bridges the chasm not with a single leap of willpower, but by patiently laying one paving stone at a time until a solid, reliable bridge is formed. Discipline, she finally understood, is not a trait you are born with. It is an identity you build, action by structured action. So, where does this leave us, standing on our own side of that chasm? The journey Kimberly Olson took, from a place of frustration and inconsistency to one of clarity and profound insight, serves as a powerful map for us all. It shows us that the struggle isn't a sign of a personal failing, but a symptom of a flawed approach. We have been trying to win a war against ourselves, when we should have been trying to build an alliance. The blueprint she provides is not about 100 different life hacks or a complicated, rigid schedule. It's about a fundamental shift in your relationship with yourself. It begins with redefining discipline not as punishment, but as the highest form of self-respect. It's about asking yourself, what would a person who truly loves and respects themselves do right now? And letting that question guide your choices. Then, it's about taking that loving intention and translating it into the physical world. Become the architect of your life. Design your environment, your routines, your systems to make those loving choices the easiest ones. Reduce the friction for your good habits and increase it for your bad ones. Create a world where your future self is set up for success. And finally, understand profound power of that upward spiral. Recognize that every small, structured action is a vote. You are not just checking a box on a to-do list. You are casting a ballot for the person you are becoming. With enough votes, the election is won, and that new identity becomes your reality. This understanding is the first, crucial step, but the journey is completed not by knowing the path, but by walking it. Change begins with a single choice, a single commitment to building a better system, a single act of self-love. If this journey resonates with you, if you feel ready to stop fighting and start building, then consider this your first pre-commitment. Join a community of fellow architects by subscribing to this channel. It's more than a click, it's a declaration. It's a vote for a future where your actions align with your intentions, and the gap between who you are and who you could be finally closes for good. The art of self-discipline isn't about becoming a different person. It's about finally building a world where the person you already are can thrive.